The letter that never came the air was heavy in Chennai that evening. The monsoon winds and passed, but the memories of flooded streets and soaked schoolbooks still lingered. Sundar sat by the window, holding a worn-out radio in his hand, the same one he had fixed years ago when he was just 10. He loved how machines worked. He never knew why. Maybe it was the way the pieces clicked together. Maybe it was the way broken things could be brought back to life. But tonight, Sundar wasn't thinking about circuits. He was thinking about a letter that was supposed to arrive 2 weeks ago from the Indian Institute of Technology. His dream, his everything. His mother, Kamala, quietly placed a steel plate of rice beside him. She didn't say anything, but Sundar could hear. The worry in her silence. Appa would have been proud of you, she said, softly. Sundar didn't respond. He missed his father terribly. The man who had worked 2 jobs, skipped meals, and still managed to smile at the end of the day. Now, his absence echoed louder than ever. He finally spoke. What if I didn't get in? His mother didn't look at him. Then we try again. Outside, kids were playing cricket with a broken bat and no shoes. Sundar used to be one of them. Now, he was somewhere between childhood and a life he hadn't reached yet. The next morning, the postman came late. Sundar ran to him like a boy, chasing a kite. Anything for me? The postman shook his head. Sorry, Dambi. Sundar's heart dropped. This was the 3rd week. His friends had already received their letters. Some had gotten in. Some hadn't, but at least they knew. Sundar was trapped in waiting. That night he couldn't sleep. His mother sat by the old fan, sewing torn blouses for a neighbor. The light flickered. Sundar watched her fingers move with the grace of someone who had done this 1,000 times. He wondered if she was tired, or if she was just used to it. He whispered. Why do some people never get what they dream of? She looked up, her eyes tired but kind. Because some dreams are waiting for the right moment. And what if that moment never comes? Then we create one. The next day, the letter arrived, but it wasn't from my IT. It was from a man named Vivek in Mumbai. He said he had seen Sundar's repair work on a neighborhood TV set. He said he was impressed. He said he had a small workshop and needed help with something new, a kind of computer for homes. He called it a project for the future. Sundar was confused. He had never met this man. How did he know about him? But then inside the envelope there was a photo. It was Sundar's father, standing beside a younger Vivek. The two were smiling, covered in grease and joy. They had worked together long ago. Your father told me you'd be better than both of us. The letter ended. Sundar sat in silence. His mother read the letter, her eyes welling up. Maybe this is the moment, she whispered. Sundar packed a small bag. His mother gave him a tiffin box and a stitched shirt as the train to Mumbai pulled away. He looked out the window and wondered, was this how the journey started? Not with a grand moment, but a letter from the past. He didn't know the answer, but what no one expected was that years later, in a crowd of thousands, the Prime Minister of India would point at a woman. And Sundar Pichai would see something he never thought possible. But that moment was still far away, because, first, he had to face what waited in Mumbai, and not all of it was good. The man at the station, the sun was melting into the Mumbai skyline. As Sundar stepped off the train, the weight of his bag far lighter than the weight in his chest. He had never been to a city this large before. Everything around him felt enormous. The platforms buzzed with people, announcements echoed overhead, and vendors called out names of foods he'd only heard about on the radio. He stood still for a moment, shrinking in the middle of it all. His mother's words rang in his ears. Be humble, but do not be small. He clutched the letter tightly in his hand. It smelled like old ink and something faintly familiar. Maybe engine oil, maybe memory. He looked around for the man in the photo. Vivek was supposed to be here. Tall, lean, always smiling. That's what the letter had described. But all Sundar saw was a crowd of strangers, walking fast, brushing past him like he wasn't even. Their doubt, and then a man stepped forward. He was not tall, not lean, not smiling. He wore a wrinkled shirt, had a thick mustache, and his eyes looked like they hadn't known sleep in days. He held a cardboard sign that said pichai. His voice was flat when he spoke. "You're the boy?" Sundar nodded, unsure. "Are you Vivek?" The man laughed once, short and dry. "No, Vivek sir is busy. I am Arjun. Come." Before Sundar could ask anything else, Arjun turned and started walking fast. Sundar had no choice but to follow. The streets outside were overwhelming. The honking didn't stop. The smells of fried food and petrol blended into something dizzying, and the people, so many people, everyone seemed to have a place to be. Everyone except him. After what felt like hours of walking, they reached a cramped alley. At the end of it was a rusty blue gate that opened into a small garage. Wires hung from the ceiling like vines. Metal parts were scattered everywhere. Fans, radios, broken monitors, even a discarded television lying on its side. In the middle of the chaos stood a table with something half built on it. Sundar leaned in. "It's a motherboard," he said. Quietly, Arjun looked at him, unimpressed. "It's a headache." Before Sundar could ask about Vivek again, the lights flickered and went out. The room fell into a warm darkness. Arjun cursed it under his breath and lit a small kerosene lamp. Its flame danced, casting long shadows across the walls. No power again. "Welcome to the future, boy." Sundar sat down on a wooden stool. He looked around. The place didn't feel like the dream he'd imagined. There were no shining computers, no great machines, only broken parts and bitter men. "Where's Vivek?" he finally asked. Arjun didn't answer. Instead, he handed him a screwdriver. "If you want to eat tonight, fix that fan." So he did. For hours, Sundar worked quietly, methodically. He took the fan apart, cleaned the dust, checked the wires, replaced a broken fuse, and put it all back together. Arjun watched from the corner, chewing on roasted peanuts and drinking. Chai that had gone cold. When the fan started spinning again, slow but steady, Arjun gave a small nod. Not praise. Just acknowledgement. That night, Sundar slept on the floor beside the workshop table. He didn't dream. He was too tired, too confused. By morning, he had a fever. The next few days blurred together. He worked during the day, repaired radios and circuit boards, and swept the floor when Arjun told him to. He still hadn't met Vivek. No one talked about him. It was as if the man in the photo had never existed. But one afternoon, everything changed. Sundar was fixing a transistor when he overheard a phone call. Arjun had left the door open and was pacing in the alley. "No, sir, he doesn't know anything yet. Yes, the boy's good. Like his father." "But Vivek sir said not to tell him anything until he's ready." There was a long pause. "I don't know. If he'll be ready." He's soft. Too polite. Like a teacher's son. The words hit Sundar like a stone. His hands froze. He felt something rise in his throat, but he swallowed it. That night, Sundar didn't eat. He sat outside the garage, watching the stars. They looked different here, dimmer farther away. Back home, his mother used to say that stars were old souls watching over us. He wondered if his father was watching now, if he was proud, if he would tell him to stay, or run out the next morning. Arjun didn't come to the shop. Sundar waited, confused. The gate was open, the tools untouched. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher. And just as he was about to go look for help, a black ambassador car pulled up in front of the alley. Two men in formal shirts stepped out. They looked around, saw Sundar, and walked up to him. "You're Pichai's boy?" Sundar stood still. "Yes." One of them handed him an envelope. It had no return address. Just a handwritten note inside. "I've been watching. If you're still here by sunrise tomorrow, I'll know you're ready. Come to the roof." The roof. Sundar ran up the stairs behind the garage. They were old, creaky, and covered in cobwebs. He had never even noticed them before. When he reached the top, he found nothing but a locked door and an old radio antenna. He turned around, heart pounding. Nothing made sense anymore. Who was he? Why hadn't he come earlier? Was Arjun lying all along? Or was this part of something bigger? Sundar sat down on the steps, watching the moon rise over the city. He didn't know what would happen the next day. He didn't know who was testing him or why, but deep inside, something had changed. He wasn't the scared boy who had stepped off that train anymore. He was tired, yes, confused, definitely, but afraid? Not anymore, the face behind the door. Rooftop was silent. The kind of silence that didn't just lack sound, it pressed against the skin. Dawn had not fully arrived yet, but the sky had begun to shift from black to a faint blue, like a curtain slowly lifting. Sundar stood in front of the old iron door, his breath shallow, the letter crumpled in his hand. His fingers trembled, not because of fear, but because this was the closest he had come to answers in days. Then the door creaked. It wasn't loud, but in the early stillness, it sounded like the beginning of something irreversible. A tall man stepped out. His face was thinner than the photo. The years had drawn lines along his eyes, but the eyes were the same, sharp, searching, and deeply alive. He wore a plain white shirt and dark trousers. No tie, no pretense. Asterisk. You must be Pichai's son, the man said. Sundar hesitated, then nodded. You're Vivek? The man didn't confirm it. He just stepped aside and gestured toward the rooftop. Come in, we have work to do. It wasn't what Sundar expected. He thought there would be more, a welcome, maybe an explanation. But all he got was a bench, a desk covered in circuit boards, and a single fan spinning overhead. The rooftop had been transformed into something between a lab and a shelter. Half-open toolkits sat next to pots of dried-up plants. The air smelled like warm metal and old ambition. Vivek sat down across from him. Tell me what you see here, he said, pointing to a circuit diagram on the desk. Sundar looked down. It was complex, more advanced than anything he had seen back in school, but the structure was familiar. Parallel power line, VO to E divider. It's a regulator design, he said slowly. Vivek raised an eyebrow, then leaned forward. Most boys your age would just stare and say nothing. I am not most boys, Sundar replied, quietly but firmly. Vivek smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Good, because most boys break under pressure, and this world has no use for the ones who can't hold their ground. Why did you bring me here? That question had waited long enough. Vivek tapped the table twice. Your father saved my life, not in a dramatic way. He didn't pull me out of a fire or jump in front of a car. He just believed in me when no one else did. When I was building junk out of nothing, when people laughed at me, when my own parents told me to stop wasting time. Your father was the only one who said, keep going. Sundar listened. Still unsure where this was going, Vivek continued. I failed more times than I can count. Projects collapsed. Money disappeared. People left. But your father, he stayed. And before he died, he told me, my son will finish what we started. He will build what we only dreamed of. Those words sat between them like a promise too big to carry. But I didn't even know him that well, Sundar said. He never told me any of this. Because he wanted you to find your own way, not chase his shadow. Vivek stood and walked to the edge of the rooftop. The city below had begun to wake up. Horns started to sound. Shutters rolled open. People poured into the streets like a flood. The world moved forward without waiting for anyone. This is your moment, Vivek said. But I won't hand it to you. If you want in, you earn it. I don't care who your father was. I don't care what school you went to. What matters is what you do from here. He pointed to a box under the table. It was locked. There's a project. Inside, it's unfinished. It's complicated. No instructions. You have 5 days. If you can bring it to life, you stay. If not, you go home. What is it? Sundar asked. Ray. Vivek turned away. You'll see. And with that, he walked back inside and closed the rooftop door. Behind him, Sundar stood there. Alone again, the box was heavier than it looked. He carried it down the stairs, past the garage, and into the small storage room where he had been sleeping. He cleared a space on the floor and opened the lid. Inside was a scattered puzzle of technology. Wires, chips, a half-written blueprint, and something. That looked like the skeleton of a personal computer. But this wasn't just any computer. It was modular strange, ahead of its time. The components didn't match. Some were locally made, others looked foreign. It was as if someone had taken ideas from 10 different places and tried to make them speak the same language. He picked up one part, a small copper plate with unfamiliar etchings. It hummed faintly in his hand. This wasn't about fixing something. This was about finishing something that had never worked. That night, Sundar didn't sleep. He sat with the parts laid out around him, a notebook on one side, a cup of cold tea on the other. He started sketching, rewriting, testing voltage, measuring resistance. For every answer he found, 2 new questions appeared. And yet, something inside him refused to stop. By the end of day 1, he had mapped the circuit logic. By day 2, he had figured out the problem with the power unit. Day 3 brought failure. His prototype fried and smoke filled the room. His hands burned. Tears came, uninvited. But he didn't quit. On day 4, he rebuilt it from scratch. As he worked, he remembered his mother's face. How she had smiled, even when the roof leaked. How she had never once asked for anything, even when she gave up everything. He thought of Arjun too. Harsh, bitter Arjun. Maybe the man wasn't cruel. Maybe he was just tired of seeing dreams fail. Maybe he saw something in Sundar he wished he still had in himself. On the night of the 5th day, as the clock neared midnight, Sundar connected. The final wire. Nothing happened. No lights. No sound. His heart sank. He slumped back, defeated. But then, a soft hum. The monitor blinked. And then it glowed. A single line of text appeared on the screen. Hello, Sundar. Welcome. He stared in disbelief. The machine, the dream, was alive. He laughed. Not a loud laugh, but the kind that starts in the chest and rises like hope. At that moment, someone clapped behind him. He turned. Vivek stood at the doorway, arms crossed, the faintest smile on his face. You did it. Barely, Sundar whispered. Barely is enough. For now. Vivek walked in, picked up the machine, turned it over carefully. He nodded, impressed. You know what this is? Sundar shook his head. It's the first prototype of a device we wanted to build for Indian homes. Low power, modular, cheap. Something that could bring technology to places the world forgets. Your father called it the people's computer. Sundar said nothing. The weight of it all settled in Vivek placed a hand on his shoulder. There's someone I want you to meet. Asterisk the woman at the gate for a few seconds. Time slowed. The morning air felt thick, as if holding its breath. Sundar stood frozen at the top of the steps, eyes fixed on the figure by the gate. Everything around him, the honking of early buses, the distant clatter of breakfast stalls, the hum of the prototype still whirring inside. All of it faded. The woman was standing just inside the rusted blue gate, sunlight slicing across her face in patches. She wore a plain green sari. Her hands were folded in front of her, not in prayer, but in stillness. And though the years had painted lines along her cheeks and strands of gray in her hair, there was no mistaking who she was. Sundar's heart dropped. His throat tightened. His voice, when it came, was almost a whisper. But it couldn't be. It wasn't possible. He had stood by her bedside. He had watched her eyes close. He had lit the lamp that night, shaking, as neighbors filed in with silence and sorrow. He had mourned. He had buried that grief so deeply, he hadn't spoken her name out loud since but here she was. The woman looked at him, and something flickered in her expression. Recognition, yes, but also pain. As if seeing him hurt her just as much as it healed something inside her. Before he could step forward, Vivek's hand gripped his shoulder. Listen to me, he said, voice low. She's not who you think she is. Not anymore. But she's why you're here. The words made no sense. Sundar brushed his hand off and walked forward. Double quotes, Is it really you? The woman didn't speak right away. Her lips moved slowly, forming words that hesitated. "You've grown," she said. His legs almost gave out. He wanted to rush forward, to wrap his arms around her, to feel if she was real, but something in her voice stopped him. It was her tone. Softer, yes, but unfamiliar, distant. "I don't understand," Sundar said. "They said you were gone. I saw it." She raised a hand. "What you saw was necessary for you to become who you are now." The ground beneath him shifted. The garage, the city, the prototype, everything he had worked for. It all began to blur under the weight of what she was saying. "Why?" he asked, voice breaking. "Why would you let me believe that? Why leave?" Vivek stepped closer. "Because she didn't want you caught in something dangerous." The woman, Kamala, finally, looked him full in the face. Her eyes were wet but steady. "I worked with Vivek and your father, years ago, before you were even old enough to walk. We were part of a group, thinkers, builders, dreamers who wanted to create something that could change lives. Not for fame, not for money, but because India needed it. Homes without power, schools without tools, children who deserved more." She paused. A rickshaw passed by, the driver calling out for passengers, unaware that a young man's world was unraveling just a few feet away. But when the government changed, when funds disappeared, when we were labeled radicals, everything collapsed. Your father kept working quietly. He built parts at night, sent prototypes to hidden labs. And when they came looking, he told them it was all his doing. Sundar couldn't believe what he was hearing. "He went into hiding," Tamala nodded. "He made me promise to disappear, so they wouldn't use me to pressure him. He said you were safer if you believe I was gone. And then, when he died, you didn't come back. I watched from far away. I saw you grow, struggle, rise. And when Vivek told me you were coming here, I knew the time had come." "You let me suffer," Sundar said, tears now slipping down his face. "I let you grow," she said, stepping forward. "I died so you could live. Not in fear, not in hiding, but free, with a name that could rise without shadows." Sundar turned away. He couldn't look at her. His mind was reeling, grief, love, betrayal all tangled together. He sat down on the steps, his face in his hands. Vivek knelt beside him. "You were never meant to find this place so soon. But the world moves faster now. The people's computer, it's not a dream anymore. It's a necessity. And you're the only one left who can finish what your parents began." Sundar lifted his head slowly. "I'm just one man. So is your father. So is every person who ever changed anything." They sat in silence for a while. The sky was now fully lit, and the haze of morning making the city look softer than it was. Nearby, a school bell rang. Laughter echoed down the alley from kids in uniform. Life was moving forward. "What do you want me to do?" Sundar asked. Kamala stepped closer, her voice steady. "Launch it. Not as a business, not as a brand, as a movement. We've already built the framework. The prototype you fixed. That's the heart of it. Now you just need to build the voice. What about Arjun? He was placed here to watch you, not to teach you, to test you. He was part of the old network, and he's been waiting too." Sundar shook his head. The truth was too big, too strange. "And Modi ji?" Vivek looked at him sharply. "He doesn't know everything, but he knows enough." "He was part of the Reform Council when your father first presented his idea. He remembered the vision. When he became prime minister, he quietly reopened some of the closed labs, revived the tech grants. And now he wants to showcase something new, something real. Not from foreign companies, from us, from the ground." Sundar felt something shift inside him. The weight of all those nights fixing radios, the sound of his mother's sewing machine, the silence of his father's absence. They weren't just pieces of his past. They were the beginning of this moment. When does he want to see it? 2 weeks from now, in Delhi. Sundar stood slowly. He wiped his face, took a deep breath, and turned to look at the garage. Inside, the machine waited, half built, still humming. "Then we better make it perfect. Asterisk someone. His watching workshop had never felt this quiet before. Even with the old fan spinning and the machine humming softly in the corner, something about the room had changed. It was a silence that didn't just surround Sundar. It crept inside him. He stared at the message on the screen, his fingers hovering above the keyboard, unsure if he should even touch it. Someone is watching. Do not trust everyone. It blinked once, then vanished. He leaned closer. Nothing else appeared. He opened the command log. No trace. Checked the hardware diagnostics. Clean. He ran a scan across the software shell. No hidden code. It was as if the message had never existed. But Sundar knew what he saw, and it shook him. He turned toward the door. The sunlight outside looked too calm, too ordinary. He stood for a moment, then walked out quickly, heading for the rooftop. Vivek was there, tightening bolts on an antenna. The sky above was clear. Clouds drifted lazily, unaware that something beneath them had begun to crack. Vivek, Sundar said, trying to keep his voice even. Someone just sent a message through the prototype. Vivek didn't stop working. What did it say? Someone is watching. Do not trust everyone. That made Vivek pause. He lowered his tool slowly and turned to Sundar. Did anyone else see it? No. It disappeared before I could take a screenshot. Like it wasn't part of the system at all. Vivek looked out of the city, the distant towers rising above the smoke and steel. We had enemies, Sundar, years ago. Not in a dramatic, movie-like sense. No guns, no chase scenes. Just quiet resistance. People who believe technology should stay in the hands of the few. People who profit from control, from scarcity. They thought what we were building was dangerous. That giving computing power to the poor would create rebellion. So they made sure the project died, but now it's alive again. Yes. And so are the eyes that killed it the first time. They said nothing for a while. Do you think it's Arjun? Sundar finally asked. Vivek took too long to answer. I don't know, he said. But he's not the man he used to be. After your father died, something in him broke. He stopped believing in people. In hope, Sundar thought of the nights Arjun gave him old radios to repair, always with a bitter joke. He thought of the time Arjun stayed late, pretending not to care, but secretly. Watching him build, he thought of the moment Arjun said nothing, just handed him a cup of tea after his circuit burned out. What should we do now? Sundar asked. Vivek walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. We keep going. We finish the prototype. We encrypt everything. We lock every line of code. And we prepare for Delhi. Back inside the workshop, Sundar got to work. He pulled apart the interface module, rewired the touch circuit, and began designing a new kind of input, one that didn't rely on English. One that could respond to local languages, dialects, even voice. He remembered something his father once told him when he was 10, holding a broken light switch in their old Chennai home. Every invention should speak the language of the people, not the inventor. So Sundar made the machine speak Tamil first, then Hindi, then added a script converter to handle Marathi, Telugu, and Bengali. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. The device no longer just responded to keystrokes. It responded to who you were, where you came from, and what you needed. 3 days passed like a work silence. Whispers between Sundar and Vivek. Kamala came by each night with food, always quiet, always watching her son as if trying to memorize who he had become. But on the fourth night, Sundar returned to the workshop and found the door open. Inside. The prototype was gone. His chest tightened. He looked around, no signs of forced entry. The tools were untouched. The table still had his soldering iron lying sideways. The wire still warmed. But the heart of everything, the people's computer, had vanished. He ran to the rooftop. Vivek, he shouted. No answer. He ran down to the alley. Nothing. Finally. He burst through Arjun's back room. The older man was sitting quietly, sharpening a knife near a stack of newspapers. Where is it? Sundar demanded. Arjun didn't look up. Where is what? Don't play with me. The prototype is missing. Arjun stood slowly. His eyes, usually clouded, were suddenly sharp. I didn't touch your machine, boy. I don't need your half-built dreams. I've already seen what they do to people. So you just happened to be sitting here while someone walked in and took the most important thing we've built. Maybe you shouldn't have left it alone. Sundar stepped closer, fists clenched. You knew my father. You worked with my mother. You were part of this. You trained me. If you're not with us, then why are you still here? Arjun stared at him, and then quietly said, because I failed. Because I couldn't finish what your father started. And because I thought maybe, just maybe ... you could. That silenced Sundar. But if you think I stole your prototype, you're wrong. I may be a bitter man, but I'm not a traitor. Sundar turned and walked away. Heart pounding. Later that night, Kamala found him sitting by the riverbank behind the garage, staring at the water. Double quotes, I failed, he whispered. She sat beside him. Didn't speak for a while. You didn't fail, she finally said. You just entered the part of the story where you must walk through fire. Your father faced it. So did I. And now, it's your turn. What if I can't rebuild it in time? Kamala reached into her bag and pulled out a small notebook. Brown, cover, frayed edges. Your father's design journal, she said. He gave it to me before he died. Told me to keep it safe. Told me you would know when the time came. Sundar opened it. Page after page of notes, diagrams, sketches, ideas that had never been finished. Buried dreams waiting to be reborn. And then, near the final page, a phrase written in his father's handwriting. If you lose the machine, don't lose the idea. The soul of it lives in you. Sundar closed the notebook, his hands shaking. Then we start again, he said. And they did. For the next 10 days, Sundar worked with a different kind of fire. He rewrote every part of the code from memory. He rebuilt the shell using scrap parts and an old display module Arjun had saved years ago. He pulled late nights with Vivek, who had reappeared with no explanation, only quiet urgency. And on the last day, just before they were set to leave for Delhi, something unexpected happened. A package arrived. No name, no address. Just a plain box. Inside it was the missing prototype. Untouched. And a note. You're not the only one who believes in the dream. We were testing you. Asterisk, good face in the crowd. The crowd was massive. A rolling sea of voices, colors, and eager eyes. The Delhi Science Summit was no ordinary event this year. Cameras clicked in every direction. Dignitaries moved through the crowd like chess pieces. Television vans lined the outer gates. Students in uniforms held tiny flags. Innovators, entrepreneurs, and foreign guests sat in rows under white tents, wiping sweat from their brows as the morning sun pressed down without mercy. Sundar stood backstage, holding the finished prototype, the people's computer, in both hands. Not because it was heavy, but because it deserved reverence. It was no longer just a machine. It was memory, promise, and resilience made tangible. A quiet revolution disguised as a gray metal box. His shirt clung to his back, soaked. He hadn't slept much in days, dark circles under his eyes. Fingers covered in small burns and cuts from the rebuild. But he felt calm. Not the absence of fear kind of calm, the deeper kind. The kind that comes when you know who you are and why you're standing where you are. Beside him stood Vivek, dressed in a modest white kurta, worn sandals on his feet. He didn't say much. He never had to. Just a glance, a nod, and Sundar understood. Asterisk. Kamala was in the front row, seated behind a line of government officials. Her face was unreadable. Pride and grief lived there side by side. She had survived too many lives to show emotion openly. But Sundar could see it, the way her hand rested on her lap, clenched slightly, like it had all come down to this moment. Then the music changed. A slow rhythm of tabla and chennai. The anchor stepped forward to announce the keynote. Ladies and gentlemen, the voice echoed across the arena. Please rise to welcome the Honorable Prime Minister of India. And there he was. Modi ji stepped onto the stage with a quiet confidence, dressed in his usual kurta and vest, palms pressed together in greeting. The crowd roared, but he didn't wave. He walked straight to the podium, scanned the faces, and raised one hand for silence. Today, he began, we are not gathered to celebrate a finished product, but a powerful beginning. He spoke with purpose, each sentence building on the last. For decades, we have looked outside our borders for innovation. But true change comes, not from imports or imitation, but from the voices within, from small homes, from forgotten towns, from mothers sewing late at night and fathers fixing wires in the dark. Today, we celebrate a project born from such places. He turned slightly, gesturing to the backstage area. Sundar Pichai, please come forward. The applause was thunderous. Sundar stepped on the stage. His legs moved with practiced steadiness, but his heart raced. Thousands of eyes were on him, not just as a young man with a machine, but as a symbol of something greater. He placed the prototype on the table at center stage. The lights caught its polished surface. Modi ji leaned forward slightly. This is the people's computer. Affordable, accessible, multilingual, modular, built by Indians, for India. The crowd clapped again. Students cheered. Some stood to see. Better. And then it happened. As the applause died down, Modi ji raised his hand again, not to speak, but to point. Sundar, he said softly, turning slightly. Look there. His hand extended toward the audience. Sundar followed the direction. Of the gesture. At first, all he saw was a sea of faces. Then a camera flash. Then a woman, standing near the back, dressed in a cotton blue sari. She was thin, older, darker than his, but her eyes, they held something familiar. Something impossibly familiar. His breath caught in his throat. She smiled. A sad, knowing smile. And in that instant, something inside him cracked open. He had seen those eyes before. Not in Chennai, not in memory. In a photo his father once kept hidden. A worn picture of a woman from a rural village in Gujarat. She wasn't family. She was someone else. Someone from the original team. Someone no one talked about. Vivek appeared beside him, whispering low. Her name is Nalini. She was the one who first drew the sketch for the processor core. Before your father. Before me. She vanished before the project was shut down. They said she was dead, Sundar whispered. No, Vivek said. They made her disappear. She's been watching all this time. Sundar took a step forward. But before he could move, Nalini raised her hand slightly and shook her head. Just once. Then turned and disappeared into the crowd. It was over in seconds, but it left a mark on him that would never fade. After the ceremony, after the cameras had been shut off and the dignitaries had left the stage, Sundar sat in the quiet corner. The tent, staring at the prototype. He didn't feel victorious. He felt responsible. Kamala joined him, setting down a glass of water. You saw her? She asked. He nodded. Was she real? Kamala smiled faintly. Sometimes the most real people are the ones the world refuses to see. Sundar looked at his mother. Why didn't you ever tell me about her? Because the truth is heavier than most people can carry. You had to grow strong enough first. He stared out at the empty chairs, the banners flapping gently in the warm wind. What happens now? Kamala reached over and touched his hand. Now you lead. And he did. In the weeks that followed, Sundar traveled across the country. He launched pilot programs in remote schools, handed the device to village teachers who had never touched a computer before. He watched children type their names in their own languages. He watched farmers calculate yields. He watched mothers learn to read letters sent by their sons in the city. He didn't chase fame. He built quietly. The people's computer became more than a machine. It became a movement, and yet every once in a while, when Sundar looked into a crowd, at a bus station, at a village meeting, at a railway platform in a forgotten town, he would catch a glimpse of her. And I watching. Just for a moment. Like a promise still unfinished.